Well, the Democrats seem to be divided on how to respond to President Trump's decisive strikes on Iran's nuclear sites. AOC with this hot take, quote, "It is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment." Others not going so far as impeachment, but are upset that the strikes were done without congressional authorization.
The president has acted so prematurely.
The destruction of these facilities is a positive in the sense that it will set back Iran's program.
Trump lied to the American people and to his voters, promising he would not get us in yet another Middle East war.
He was lying to us about what he was going to do.
It is so grossly unconstitutional.
Literally, you could have hollered at us on Monday.
I've been always calling to destroy these nuclear facilities.
It clearly could endanger our forces in the region and Americans around the world.
John Fetterman, the one voice who has been so supportive on this. Jesse, I want to ask you, if Democrats were informed, and we know Chuck Schumer was informed just before, we know there was an attempt to call Hakeem Jeffries, Caroline Leavitt has confirmed this for us, but if they were informed more broadly, do you think this would have remained a secret from the press?
No, they would have leaked it. Shifty Schiff leaked everything from the Russia investigation. I wouldn't trust the Democrats as far as I can throw them, and I can throw Democrats far. Ask Harold. If Biden had launched these strikes, Kaylee, Morning Joe would have wanted to throw a military parade for him. Democrats would have lined up and called him bold and decisive, Churchillian. I can see it now. Right now, they're saying they should have been able to vote on it. They didn't want to vote on it. They don't want to vote on anything. And why would you have Congress vote on a secret airstrike? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's a secret strike. You don't let the whole world know you're about to do it by calling a vote. This isn't a ground invasion where you need authorization. Obama and Biden launched thousands of missile strikes against Syria, Pakistan, Libya, Iraq. No Democrat ever called for congressional authorizations. They didn't say anything. They're trying to find this clever political terrain that they only care about inside the Beltway, where they can be against Trump on a technicality, but not against this mission. And they think it's really smart in Washington, but everybody in the rest of the country is like, yeah, we know what you guys are up to. You guys sound like stupid politicians. Now, Barack Obama, he was anti-war, and he won the nomination kind of based off that, but he was anti-Iraq war. He wasn't anti-war. AOC is like anti-war. Like if Trump had launched strikes against the devil, she would have been like impeached. That's how crazy she is. I used to think she had a shot at a career in Washington. No more. I'm going to have Johnny run against her in Brooklyn. That's how sure I am he could win.
Man, Johnny for Congress. I like it. Dana, to Jesse's exact point, Senator Kaine was calling for a public debate before the American people. How do you have a public debate about a stealth mission?
Well, also, it's like we have been actually having this debate for 20 years about Iran wanting to get a nuclear weapon. And it's been one of the most bipartisan agreements in Washington for 20 years. Bush, 43, Obama, Biden, Trump, Biden, Trump. Everybody was against Iran getting a nuclear weapon. The intel community, well, maybe more on that later, Israel told the president, look, they've lit the fuse. They are 2 to 4 weeks away from being able to have a bomb. Here's what we've done to lay the groundwork for you. If you want to, please, sir, if you would make that decision, we would be so grateful. And that's what happened. And instead of on the night, you remember when Osama bin Laden was killed, remember the celebration outside of the White House? And Obama was every good thing under the sun. And in this one, they just want to complain about it. You couldn't even get Democrats to say, wow, our men and women in military uniform, amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. That was not their first reaction. Also, I would end with this. Hakeem Jeffries not answering the phone is the perfect metaphor for his leadership of the Democratic Party in the House.
Yes, absolutely. That's well said. Harold, so for AOC to say this merits impeachment, that's saying that it is a high crime and misdemeanor to deprive a maniac regime of nuclear weapons. I mean, it's preposterous. But my question to her would be, would you impeach Biden for attacking the Houthis without congressional authorization, Obama in Libya, Clinton? We can go down the list.
I think you said it well yesterday when we were on with Brett about there have only been 11 authorizations
of war, but over 150 efforts on the part of our military defending our interests around the globe. I understand what some of these people are talking about, but when Democrats, including the Congresswoman from here in New York, suggest that the president ought to be impeached, the greatest stabilizer of peace and stability in the Middle East in my lifetime, and I'm 55 years old, has been the Iranians. And the Israelis, to Dana's point, have done so much over the last several months, and we forget the pager where they blew up those guys. That had to be a very upsetting day for those fellows that had pagers in their pockets, and the things blew up to where we are today. And I don't mean to make light of it. This was an incredible effort. Now, the person I give a lot of respect to, because he has been consistent, because I think Democrats will only complain about it when it's Republicans, and Republicans a lot of times complain when it's Democrats when there's an effort using our military, has been Tim Kaine, who did this when there were Democrats in office and Republicans in office. I don't think he's right about this one, but I do think the reforming the War Powers Act is probably a smart thing. People forget it passed in 1973. Congress, Senate passed it. Nixon vetoed it. The Congress and the Senate overrode the veto. This is all about Vietnam and the intense conflicts there and the prolonged conflicts there. Congress wanted a greater voice. We may be at a point, to take this situation, I think the president was right in what he did. He was constitutionally correct in what he did. We may need a longer conversation and a serious conversation about the War Powers Act when we're not about to engage in military conflict, when people can look at it in a more sober and sane way.
Yeah, and look, there's ample examples. Jonathan Turley points out Hillary Clinton arguing there's no need to inform Congress when she was Secretary of State. Joey, I'm curious your thoughts as someone who served.
I just, all of these Democrats that are, losing their mind over President Trump doing something that might prevent war. Where in the hell were they at when Biden withdrew from Afghanistan and 13 of our service members died? I mean, we just showed a clip there of one of them going, oh, that definitely puts troops in danger. Well, I've seen troops in danger. I've seen troops in danger when Obama gave us rules of engagement that ultimately, in my opinion, went to the loss of my friends and my legs. I've seen troops in danger when Biden brought us out of Afghanistan in a way that absolutely left us sitting ducks, to the point that we negotiated with the Taliban to provide our security. That doesn't put troops in danger. Negotiating with our sworn enemy to provide security for us because they may not like the other guys worse than us. Where were you at then? Where were your crocodile tears, your call for impeachment? I mean, I can't wait for 3 or 4 months from now when there's an investigation and we find out that Hillary Clinton paid Christopher Steele to research and do a report that shows that Trump's a Mossad plant. Because that's the basis of impeachment for the Democrat Party.
Wow. Well, we will keep you updated. All right, up next, Joe Biden's wide open border nightmare. Iran might be waking up terror sleeper cells. Wow, right here in the United States.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.